As this fall season marches on here through the northern plains, upper Midwest, southern Canada, several things are coming to pass that make it quite notable for this autumn in particular. It's relatively warm. We're seeing pretty consistently warmer than average temperatures, and that has impacts in other ways as well. Areas that have been dry up a little more because of lingering evaporation rates even as the sun gets lower. Now, there is going to be this particular week, late this week into the weekend, potential for a tropical storm hurricane, possibly of large proportions, or at least powerful, to impact the United States, starting somewhere in the Gulf or Florida, and then moving up the eastern seaboard during the course of this upcoming weekend into next week. And that will have the potential to produce some very heavy rainfall in some parts of the eastern United States, and I can't, from this vantage point, predict the track of that storm just yet. But I can predict that likely elsewhere, it will end up being a fairly dry week. So here's the setup. Jet stream coming out of the northwest for the time being, curving down around a trough that has temporarily brought some fairly cool weather into the Great Lakes region. Hot weather has really been dropping down south, and that will likely sort of subside a little bit as that hurricane system builds up through the Caribbean and into the Gulf of Mexico. It's likely to spread some rainfall into some area of the Gulf Coast, which will keep the heat away. It'll still be fairly hot back in Texas with a lot of 90s, and as the week goes along, that's going to be pulled northward again, because you'll notice as we go through this week, the primary jet stream will be retreating into an almost summer-like pattern, which will allow warm temperatures across the country. This is also a scenario that will encourage that tropical system or that hurricane to move northward and bring excessive rainfall wherever its track is, whether that be along the eastern seaboard or up through the eastern part of the Midwest. And again, I cannot determine that at this juncture. As we hit the weekend into next week, we're still going to see the jet stream pretty far north, although I do expect to see a redevelopment of the general low pressure circulation in the northeastern states, which will set up northwest flow, which should eventually cool things off a bit. And there's some evidence that as we get on into the end of the first week of October, we'll get a split flow. That just means a weak jet stream, which means not a lot of rainfall. Speaking of, generally speaking, it's going to be pretty dry this week, except wherever this tropical system tracks in the southeast. There will be some rain in eastern Canada, and that's about it. Pretty much dry weather through the northern plains and the southern plains. The second week, wherever that storm tracks, there could be some excessive rainfall. It still looks almost bone dry in the Great Plains this week. Maybe some showers around the western end of the Great Lakes, and the Pacific Northwest will finally see some rain getting down at least into northern California.